Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I have an exciting video with FortiAP's and creating a mesh network between your Forti access points. Just as an overall agenda, we're going to start with configuring your root access point, and then we will go into configuring the leaf access points. The root access point is going to be the one that is physically connected to the rest of your network. The leaf APs are the ones that are going to be not have a direct wired access to the LAN, and they will be creating that wireless mesh connection back to the root access point. So let's go ahead and just get right into it. We are going to start with the configuration of the root access point. This is the one, again, that has physical connection back into the LAN of the network. In my environment, I do already have this configured. My FortiGate is acting as the wireless LAN controller as well. And you can see the firmware that we are running is 7.2.5. I do not believe there are any significant differences between firmware versions until you get below the 5 version, which is very old at this point. If you're running anything in that range, we have other problems that we should talk about. But the first thing that you're going to do when we are configuring the root access point is you need to create a operation profile for that access point. So you can see there's some default profiles that are automatically built out here. We're gonna go ahead and create a new profile, and I'm sorry, I need to take a step back here actually. The first thing that we're going to do is create the SSID that we are going to use for the mesh connection. So all you're really going to do here, you can see that I've already have this created here, the mesh root here. This is the default SSID name. And then you want to use WPA2 personal. This is just what it looks like when you do the create new. So you're going to just make a name for it. We can just do like test 1, 2, 3. You can leave all this blank. The traffic mode that you're going to select, this is very important. You need to select this as mesh. And then you're actually going to give the name for the SSID here. You can name it anything you want. And then we are going to use WPA2 personal. This is going to be the only mode that you can select for mesh network using the GUI. I will link the admin guide for this. If we use the CLI, we have a couple additional configurations that we can make via the CLI, but to make this easier, we are just going to be using the GUI here. So WPA2 personal, and then we are going to create a passphrase. And all of these other options we can leave as default. And then we would just go ahead and save that. I'm not going to save that on mine. I already have mine configured here. So once that is ready, then we're going to come over to our operation profiles. We're going to create a new profile. If we are using different model access points, so for example, if your root access point is a 433F and your leaf AP is an 831F, we would need 2 different operation profiles, one for each model access point. If we are using just one model access point for all of our access points, then we can just leave this as we can create just one profile here. So you're just going to create the platform. I already have my platforms created. I do have one leaf access point existing already and connected. I'm adding an additional leaf access point. So my root access point is using this U43 mesh profile. So basically what we need to do here is we're going to, on our radios, we're going to be configuring the SSIDs that we're broadcasting on each radio. You can broadcast your mesh SSID on either 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. There's a couple important notes here. It is suggested on the documentation to run the mesh SSID over the 5 gigahertz band, and then broadcasting the client facing SSIDs on the 2.4 band. The 5 gigahertz band gets a lot higher throughput. And so using that increased bandwidth capability on your backhaul SSID makes sense. But it will come down to personal preference. The mesh SSID will form on either 2.4 or 5. So you just basically need to make that determination on your own, which band that you actually want to have your backhaul SSID on. And just to clear up terminology, backhaul SSID is synonymous with mesh SSID. They both mean the same thing. So you'll hear me say both. They both mean the same thing. On my configuration, as you can see, my Go Bills SSID is on my 5 gigahertz band, and then I have my backhaul SSID on 2.4, just because my environment here is a little challenging. The RF environment has a lot of obstacles here. 2.4 travels through objects better. So I have my mesh SSID set on the 2.4, and then I have my client serving SSID on the 5 gigahertz band. And an additional important note here is you do not want to broadcast more than one SSID on your backhaul radio. So if we're using 2.4 for a backhaul SSID, we do not want to be broadcasting any other SSIDs on this link. Basically, you do have the capability to do that. You could broadcast multiple SSIDs on 2.4 if you wanted to. Those other SSIDs are going to interfere with the airtime of your backhaul SSID, which is going to affect the bandwidth and performance of all of your connected clients, because those other SSIDs are going to be sharing time with that backhaul SSID. So if there's client facing being served on 2.4, all of those other devices need to wait for the backhaul to get airtime to send traffic back onto the LAN. So basically, best practice, you do not want to be broadcasting more than one SSID on the radio that you're broadcasting your backhaul SSID from. So you can see we have this all configured here. So our root AP profile is ready to go here. You can further set some other configurations if you wanted to. You could set transmit power if you wanted to. You could set the specific channel you wanted to broadcast from, so on and so forth. For my backhaul SSID, because we're on 2.4, the options are limited compared to 5, but I have basically left all the other configurations as default. So once we have that completed, if you need to, if we're using another model for our leaf access point, we'll need to create another operation profile for that other model AP. So I am using an 831F for my leaf access points. So I do have a second profile created here, and it's basically going to mirror the configuration of my root access point. So you can see I have on my 2.4 radio here, I am broadcasting my mesh SSID. And then on my 5 gigahertz radio, I am broadcasting my client-facing SSID. Another important note here, you don't really want to if you are going to configure certain channels that your backhaul SSID is going to operate on, you need to make sure that those channels are matching up on both profiles here. For the most part, I think in like enterprise environments, they're going to be using most of the time the same model access points for root and leaf AP. So you won't really need to worry about two different profiles. So just important to note those differences, though. If you are going to be using multiple profiles, you need to make sure that the configurations are going to be the same between the profiles. So once we have our operation profiles configured, we can go ahead and plug in our FortiAP to the network. We need to just make sure that the root access point can talk to the FortiGate or whatever. If you're using like a dedicated wireless controller, we need to just make sure that the root AP has communication between either the FortiGate or the wireless LAN controller. For the most part, because the wireless controller does come included with a FortiGate, for the most part, customers will be using FortiGates as their wireless controller. So this will look exactly, my environment will look exactly like yours, essentially. So we want to come under managed FortiAPs. It might take a couple minutes once you initially plug in the root access point, but it will show up here. Just give it like a minute or two. It will come on as an unauthorized device. So the first thing that we just want to do is we want to right click it and we want to assign the profile to it. So you can see this is my root profile, root access point profile that I've created. So you want to assign the profile to this device, and then you would come in and actually authorize it. Once you've done that, just give it another 2 to 3 minutes, let it come online, let it start broadcasting that mesh SSID. Once that is done, the root access point is ready to go, and we can move on to our leaf access points. What we need to do on the leaf access points is basically change the default, how the default software is going to operate. The default for FortiAPs is to look for a wireless LAN controller over an Ethernet connection. So we need to change that. We need to tell the access point to look for a wireless LAN controller over a mesh network. So we need to give that configuration to the leaf access point. We need to give it the SSID information. Tell it, hey, we're not going to be looking for the wireless LAN controller over an Ethernet connection. We need to look for it over a mesh SSID link. So we need to give it the name of the mesh SSID. We need to give it the password that we created for it. And then we need to change just that configuration to say, hey, look for this over a mesh SSID link. So we basically need to connect to the CLI of the leaf access point to inject those commands into it and change the configuration. So you can do this a couple different ways. The way that I prefer it is basically just powering up the leaf access point and then plugging our laptop directly into the Ethernet port on it. And we will just have an SSH connection into it, and we can put those commands in. You can also do this. You can access the CLI through the FortiGate wireless LAN controller. So if you wanted to, you could also just plug this into the network, come in here, authorize it, and then you can connect to the CLI directly from the FortiGate here. There's a couple additional steps that you need to take if you do it through here. So you would be putting in the configurations in the CLI, and then you need to deauthorize it. So you would deauthorize it, delete it from here, and then you can go and plug it in. It's a lot cleaner for me, in my experience, if you just plug directly into the FortiAP with your laptop and create an SSH connection. So my experience, it's a lot cleaner to just plug in directly rather than accessing the CLI through the FortiGate and then deauthorizing it and deleting it. So we're gonna go ahead and do that now. And here I've pulled up the admin guide for creating mesh networks. These are the CLI commands that we're going to be entering into our Leaf access point. These are the default IP addresses that our Leaf access point is going to be listening on. So it's pre-configured as 192.168.1.2. And then we are going to configure our computer for 192.168.1.3. I have gone ahead and plugged directly into the Ethernet port here. So we're going to disconnect from the Wi-Fi and we are going to come into our system settings. And under here, we're going to configure our static IP address here. That is our subnet mask there. Okay. Don't need router information in here. I do just fill it in just because that's just me. Go ahead, click OK. And you can see that we are connected. Go ahead and use whatever SSH program that you use, whether it's PuTTY, whatever. I'm just going to do this directly through the terminal on my Mac here. So we're going to do SSH. We're going to do admin at 192.168.1.2. Didn't like something. Now let's go ahead and try it again. I did do this on my other Leaf access point already, so I think it's not liking the key from my other. It still has the other key from my other Leaf in here. Let's go ahead and go in here and see if we can delete that out. All right, I believe I was able to remove that old SSH key, so let's try again. All right, looks good now. We do need to create a password. And now you can see I am connected to the CLI. This is the command that I used to delete my old key out. If you do run into this, when you're connecting like multiple leaf nodes, this is the command that I used to delete that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and enter in these configurations from the admin guide, as you can see here. So let's go. So this command is the command that we're basically telling it to try to create the link to the wireless controller over the mesh SSID, and that we're not actually going to be trying to form this link over an Ethernet connection. So let's go ahead and enter that in. Next command that we're going to be entering is we're going to be giving it the SSID information for our backhaul SSID. So this is the default name for the backhaul SSID. This is going to be whatever you've actually made the name for your backhaul SSID in that operation profile. Next command that we're going to be putting in is the password for our mesh SSID. So this is the command, and then you'll enter in the actual password here. I'm just going to take this off screen and enter it in. And then the last command that we need to enter is just cfg-c. And that is going to actually save the configurations that we just made. So it's going to put it into flash. So when we power down, we're not going to lose those configurations. That's all we need to do at this point on the Leaf access point. So now we are just going to reboot the Leaf access point, and we should then just go back to our FortiGate and go back to the wireless LAN controller, and we should see that form the mesh SSID and show up as a access point to our FortiGate. So let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, and in my case, I actually did not need to reboot the access point to create the link. In most cases, well, not in most cases. Sometimes you may need to reboot the access point to form the mesh link. Mine did come up basically right after I saved those commands with the cfg -c. Save those commands, created that mesh link almost immediately. You'll be able to tell there will be, so the power light on the access point in most cases will be orange, just letting you know that it's powered up. Once it does create the mesh link, you'll start seeing a blue flashing light on one of the other indicators there. So once that blue light comes on, that's an indication that it does have a link. You can see here on my FortiGate, you can see that I do have another access point here. It's coming up as unauthorized. So we need to just go ahead and authorize this access point. And we will go ahead and assign it our mesh profile here. And that is all we need to do. This will take a couple minutes here to become authorized. So I'm just going to go ahead and pause the recording. This should just take 2 to 3 minutes. Shouldn't take too long at all. I'll go ahead and pause, and once it does become authorized, I'll go ahead and check back in. All right, so we're back. I did run into one little hiccup there when getting this connected through the mesh link and authorizing it to my FortiGate. And I did run into this before. I just, it was an oversight on my part. You do need to pre-authorize the Leaf AP on the FortiGate. So you, before it forms that mesh link and shows up as an unauthorized device, go ahead and pre-authorize the Leaf AP. You'll just need the serial number for it. Basically, you're just going to come under Create New, Managed AP, and then you're going to put in the serial number. You can give it a name, whatever you want to. And then you'll assign it the profile, operation profile that you created before. So it's not going to show up here because this is a duplicate because it's already now managed, but you will see your profile down here. Select that profile, and that's going to pre-authorize that access point and also assign the profile to it. Once that is done, then just reboot the AP, and it should form that mesh connection and become authorized. Once it does become authorized, you can see it in the FortiGate. It's going to show up as online. On the LEDs on the actual FortiAP, it will change from a blue LED to a green LED. Just one other thing that I did want to point out here as well. This is what the actual topology looks like for my deployment right now. I have my FortiGate unit that's connected up to the internet, and then I have my mesh AP, my root AP that is connected to a Forti switch that goes into my FortiGate. The only difference here is that my mesh SSID is being broadcasted on 2.4 and not 5. So these the bands are just switched here. And just one other thing to note, the default configuration for FortiAPs is going to be a maximum leaf hop of 4. Basically, what that means is if you have additional APs extended out over here, and they are connecting back to the one over here, and then here, and then here, and then back to the root AP. So that would be a hop of 4 there to get back to the root AP. You can edit that configuration in the CLI if there are additional hops that need to be taken. At that point, if it's taking more than 4 hops to get back to the mesh root AP, we might need to think of a redesign there. That's performance on that leaf is not going to be great. It's got to go through all of those backhaul SSIDs just to get back to the root AP. So performance won't be great. So just another thing that I just did want to note there, that the default configuration is 4, can be edited through the CLI if you need additional hops to be taken there. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. It's a pretty straightforward, easy configuration. Just to recap, basically you're creating the SSID, the backhaul SSID. And then if you haven't already, create your client-facing SSIDs. Then you create your, so your SSIDs are created here. This is my client-facing one. This is my mesh SSID. Then you're going to come into your operation profiles, create a profile for the different models that you have within this mesh configuration. If it's just one model for all access points, then you just need one. And then assign the correct mesh SSID on the correct band. And then under hook in your root AP, get that up and managed under the FortiGate. Once that is done, connect to the CLI on your Leaf APs, enter in the commands that we did before. Basically tell it to look for the wireless controller over a mesh link, give the AP the mesh SSID configurations, the name of the SSID, and then the password for it. And then make sure you just save those configurations with the CFG-space-C command. And then once that is done, get the serial numbers for your Leaf APs, come in here and create a managed access point. Once that is done, go ahead and power back up your mesh SSIDs, or I'm sorry, your Leaf APs, and you should be good to go. So I hope this was helpful and informative for everybody. Like always, if you need help or further assistance, go ahead and put a comment in the bottom and go ahead and smash that like and subscribe button. Thanks, everyone.